Hey guys, I hope everybody's doing well. I just wanted to pop in here today and give you the video on civil rights for Latinos and Hispanics. So it's kind of covering the same time period as we covered for women and for African Americans, and that we will cover for Native Americans in our next lesson. We're talking about the 1950s and 60s. Today's we'll delve a little bit into the 70s with the video on Cesar Chavez, but for the most part, it's that middle of the 20th century and civil rights. So in the Google form, the first question is going to ask you, to list some of the struggles that this group, Latinos and Hispanics, have gone through in the past. So again, have that Google form open so that you can pause the video and answer the questions while you're listening to the video. Okay? Oops, didn't know what that is. All right. So we're comparing and contrasting civil rights. Boom. Hispanic and Latino immigration. There's going to be a lot of restrictions in the United States against people immigrating from Latin and South America. Not sure that has changed all that much. But segregation and discrimination were extended to Latinos and Hispanics in especially the southern regions of the United States. So a lot of those things that you saw when we watched when you watched the video that I created for you on African American civil rights with segregation and different water fountains and different bathrooms and things like that, that extended to Latinos and Hispanics. So they were not considered white. So they fell under that colored umbrella. They just were not as large in numbers as African Americans. So when most people learn about segregation, they learn about it with respect to African Americans, but it also affected Latino and Hispanic populations. In particular, Latinos and Hispanics were hit very hard by the Great Depression. A lot of them were in this country as seasonal workers, so they would go back and forth between the United States and Mexico, and they were not American citizens. And then those who were, if they didn't have full citizenry, but maybe had a work visa to stay here, individual counties could deport Latinos and Hispanics back to their country of origin, but for the most part, it was Mexico in the 50s, 40s, 30s, 40s, 50s. So imagine if Monmouth County had the potential today to actively deport citizens. It really today falls under the federal government and federal organizations and agencies and programs to do that sort of stuff. But back then, counties could do it. Operation Wetback was the code name for a U.S. immigration program that deported over 3.8 million Latin Americans between 1953 and 1958. And in 1962, the Cuban Missile Crisis, which I hope you remember when we studied conflict during the Cold War, the United States and the Soviet Union were on the brink of nuclear war for 13 days. And during that period, there were nuclear weapons heading to Cuba from the Soviet Union, where they would have been able to reach the United States. And after we cut ties with Cuba, a lot of refugees from Cuba who were being persecuted by the government there began to escape to the United States. And this will go on from 1962 for about 40 years it would last. The United States would allow Cuban refugees to enter the country legally only if they made it to American soil. So they had to get from Cuba to Florida, and they had to get beyond the high tide line on a beach. This created a situation where refugees who were desperate to leave Cuba would try to get to the United States on using really poorly constructed rafts and boats, and a lot of people died trying to get here. One of the most famous stories that came to prominence is the story of a young boy named Elias Gonzalez. So I'm going to play a video that's going to tell you his story.
In tonight's Whatever Happened To segment, the little Cuban boy whose mother died bringing him to America and was later taken by force back to the communist nation with the help of the U.S. government. His name? Elian Gonzalez. He now is a grown man, but many will always remember him as a symbol and a frightened little boy in a famous picture. I covered it back then. Tonight, correspondent Steve Harrigan has the story from Miami.
Thanksgiving 1999.
Do you know this boy?
Donato Dalrymple was fishing for mahi-mahi in heavy surf 3 miles off the coast of Fort Lauderdale.
I wasn't really thinking about fishing. I was over there looking at that inner tube, and as I seen my cousin pulling in the fish, I seen a hand move on that inner tube.
The hand belonged to Elian Gonzalez, tied to an inner tube by his mother. Perhaps her last act before perishing with 10 others trying to escape communist Cuba across the shark-infested Florida Straits. Elian's father, Juan Miguel Gonzalez, still in Cuba, asked for the boy back. But Miami relatives, including 2 great uncles, refused to send Elian back to the dictatorship his mother died trying to escape.
Was the ultimate sacrifice of a mother who wanted a better future of freedom for her son. And so it was something that obviously tugged on everybody's heart.
The custody battle electrified Cubans on both sides. In Miami's Little Havana, around-the-clock vigils were held around the Gonzalez family home.
Now the stalemate involving this little boy could possibly throw new immigration talks into jeopardy.
While in Havana, Cuba, Fidel Castro led daily protests demanding the boy's return to his father. The international drama dragged on for 7 months until the Clinton administration sent immigration agents armed for battle into the home. The fisherman who saved the boy now had him snatched from his arms. Castro made quick use of his victory. Elian's father, a waiter, was named a member of Cuba's National Assembly. Elian joined the Young Communist Union and became an engineer at a state-run factory. 18 years later, Fidel is gone from the scene. The U.S. Embassy in Havana is open for business, but the Elian case put a spotlight on the bitterness that has divided Cuban families and remains to this day.
Oh, I couldn't imagine something so beautiful could turn so ugly quick.
Dalrymple has never again seen the boy he saved and lost. In Miami, Steve Harrigan, Fox News.
So not only did you guys see in that clip what happened to him, but then the international uproar that the situation created. And when he was returned to Cuba, the way he was used by the Cuban government. You also, if you didn't notice, got a little pop-up in there that the House just passed a $2 trillion coronavirus economic stimulus measure. So boom, history and history. Other famous leaders, a guy named Rodolfo Corky Gonzalez, who was the founder of the Chicano movement. If you're not sure what a Chicano is, it's a term used to by many Mexican-American civil rights workers to self-identify. So just because you're a Mexican-American does not necessarily make you a Chicano. You have to be a Mexican-American civil rights worker to be a Chicano. But he founded the Chicano movement. He was a boxer, poet, and political organizer and activist. Pretty cool guy if you're ever looking for somebody to write a biography on or something. Gloria Ana, I'm going to butcher this, guys, Anzaldúa, pushed for Chicana rights. So she was a feminist Mexican-American. She wrote a book loosely based on her life growing up on the Mexico-Texas border. And she developed a theory about the marginal in-between mixed cultures that develop along borders of different countries. She's actually pretty widely studied even today. And Cesar Chavez is probably the single most famous Latino Hispanic civil rights workers. He fought to bring union rights to farm workers. He pushed for equality and educational access and voting rights. So this is, we're going to watch this 4-minute video. And I'm going to pull it up. And hopefully it loads. And oh, look at that. I'm getting Instagram messages. This is lovely, guys. You're getting quite the peek into the Miss Schoon's computer. All right, here we go. Is it coming? any second.
Have you ever
Yeah.
wondered why
And we got a
so many of your
commercial.
friends and neighbors
Oh,
always
yes.
seem to choose Southern?
All right, let's see. Here we go. I had it already pulled up and ready to go. All right. Can I get it to roll?
Have you ever wondered
And
why
we've got the same
so many of your
commercial.
friends and neighbors?
So this is just lovely, guys. I will do my best to edit this out. Probably not going to, but if you're looking for an orthodontist and you live in Southern Ocean County, there you are. Wait for it. Wait for it. He looks like a lovely orthodontist. Oh, there we go. All right. So hopefully the biography starts.
Cesar Estrada Chavez, an American civil rights activist and labor leader, was born in Yuma, Arizona on March 31st, 1927. The Chavez family lost their Arizona homestead in the Great Depression, and in the late 1930s moved to Northern California.
Cesar and his family became migrant farm workers thrust into the industrialized agriculture of California.
Cesar dropped out of school after the 8th grade to help support his family by working in the fields.
Cesar joined the Navy right after World War II when he saw places he never would have seen, so it did open his eyes up to the world very much.
After the Navy, Chavez returned to the fields and became a grassroots organizer for a Latino civil rights group. He then left the group and formed the National Farm Workers Association, now known as the United Farm Workers of America, with the goal of unionizing farm workers.
Cesar believed that the movement he founded had to be more than just a union that was solely concerned with improving wages, hours, and working conditions, although the UFW certainly did that. But it also needed to address the crippling dilemmas that farm workers face in the community after they came home from work.
Most people were poor. They didn't have access to good housing or health care or education.
Chavez was adamant that his new union follow a strict policy of using only nonviolent tactics as a means of negotiation. While the organization was still in its infancy, UFW embarked upon one of the most influential boycotts in U.S. history, the boycott of all California table grapes.
The Great Boycott really took off in '68. Cesar had studied history. He knew that for 100 years, farm worker strikes were brutally crushed, and that the agricultural industry, which in California is one of the richest and most powerful industries in the state, controlled much of rural California. So what Cesar needed to do was take the fight from the fields, where the odds were stacked against the farm workers, and move it to the cities, where the farm workers at least had a chance.
Over the next few years, led by Cesar Chavez, the farm workers would boycott, protest, march, and fast their way to a collective bargaining agreement, which guaranteed field workers, among other things, increased pay and the right to unionize.
He was responsible for a lot of the labor codes that we see today, the protections, the benefits, but the basic right to organize and affiliate.
As the head of the United Farm Workers of America, labor rights was not the only cause championed by Chavez.
Cesar's commitment to social justice went far beyond the farm workers. In the 1960s, he was a strong and vocal opponent of the Vietnam War. In the 1970s, Cesar was an early and vocal supporter of gay rights. Also not a popular position, especially at that time, among his own constituency.
Cesar Chavez died in his sleep on April 23, 1993. He was survived by his wife Helen, their 8 children, and 31 grandchildren. In 1994, he was posthumously awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom by President Bill Clinton.
In 1975, there was a reporter with a national news magazine following Cesar around for several days, rallies, marches, picket lines. And in an interview, she asked him what accounts for all the affection and respect that farm workers show you in public. And Cesar paused for a moment, and then he smiled his easy smile, and he said, "The feeling is mutual."
All right. And we're back to this. All right. Another famous leader was Jose Angel Gutierrez. He founded La Raza Unida, I think I said that right. I don't know, guys. I probably didn't. He was really spearheading the effort to get Mexican Americans to register to vote and to run for office. Last thing before we wrap it up, this is the last question in your Google form, but what are the struggles that this group is thinking about today? And I'm going to give you a couple to think about. In the form, you have to list 3, but you can only use 2 of mine to talk about. So you have to come up with one thing that Latinos and Hispanics struggle with today that is not listed below. But you can think about the struggles with and related to ICE, sanctuary states, immigration and deportation, and detention at the border. So you guys have to come up with one that is not on that list and then explain 2 of them, okay? That's it for today. I'll talk to you guys soon. I miss ya. Bye.